Hi everyone, and welcome to The Climate of Sport with me, Claire Poole, the podcast where we explore how the world of sport can drive climate action, champion equality and shape a more sustainable future. From the boardroom to the locker room, from grassroots to global stages, the game is changing and so are we. Let's get into it. Hi everyone, and welcome back to The Climate of Sport podcast with me, Claire Poole. Brilliant to be back with you again, the week after Earth Day, Earth Week, still Earth Month now. We hope you had some celebrations. We hope that you announced something or surfaced something brilliant or just thought about the world around us last week as well. We dropped our special episode of The Climate of Sport, our FIFA World Cup deep dive edition. So we hope you enjoyed that. It's been brilliant to hear from people about what they thought of it and hearing from colleagues about sending that around their teams and having it as a must listen to ahead of the tournament this year. We've heard that from a few different people. So that's very cool and very appreciated. We hope it's really, really useful for you. And interesting as well, just to be up on all the different angles for the upcoming tournament this summer. We saw loads of sports organisations celebrating Earth Day by surfacing progress, activities. So we saw stuff out of Major League Baseball, European Athletics, Formula One, the LA Rams, Athletes United, Baltimore Ravens, and so many others, just talking about the work that they're doing year round and using Earth Day as a hook for that. We also saw new strategies and impact reports drop from World Triathlon, from Brentford Football Club, from Cycling Canada, from the Outdoor Industry Association, and others as well, like so many, too many to count. And just as a reminder on that, we have an accompaniment to the podcast, a weekly newsletter called The Brief. If you're not signed up for that, do it. Sign up. It's free. It comes to your inbox every week. And that is a much deeper dive on all of the news stories around sustainability, biodiversity and sport every single week, as well as upcoming events, jobs. And then I do a bit more of a deep dive into more stories as well there. So if you're not already signed up, there'll be a link in the show notes. Definitely sign up to that. It's a great accompaniment to this. Other things that are going on, we're looking forward to hearing all about the Green Sports Alliance Summit in Cleveland that's taking place next week. I'll be joining virtually and looking into some of the content, really looking forward to that. So for those who are attending, have fun. For those that aren't, check it out if you haven't already. We're also hosting a national emergency briefing this week, mainly for people in the UK, but anyone can join. This is something I attended in Westminster last November, and it really fundamentally affected me, to be honest. It was hearing from lots of different experts in their fields around things like national security, the economy, nature, food, about the impact of the climate crisis, and it had a real impact on me. So we are screening The People's Emergency Briefing, which is a film, on Thursday, which is going to be the 30th of April to finish off Earth Month. So if you aren't signed up for that, also please join us if it's of interest. It's taking place at 6:15 p.m. UK time on the 30th of April, which is today. If you are listening to the podcast, drop immediately. Or if you are listening back, sorry you missed it, but I'm sure we'll write something up about it for you to be able to hear what's going on. Other things I noticed this week, to be honest, as well, I've been watching more TV because for the first time in a number of weeks, I wasn't traveling or going to things all the time and I had a bit more time to myself. So caught up on my TV. Have you guys seen This Is a Gardening Show on Netflix with Zach Galifianakis? It's so good. It's only, I think, 6 episodes of about 15 minutes, but it's informative, funny, very cool. He interviews little kids. It's very, very cool. So have a look at that if you haven't already, if you're looking for a recommendation. And also one of my long-term favourite shows, Hacks, if you watch that on HBO, which is absolutely brilliant. They always try and integrate sort of environment into dialogue or into the background. And in their new series that's out now, they have the core crew, the key characters, charging their car on the way back from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. So they are charging their EV and they're standing around the car and having a chat, which is just great to see the kind of environmental activities happening in the background. It wasn't a core part of the dialogue or the scene or the story of that episode, but just to see it happening socializes the idea that this is normal, this is happening, and it's cool. So that was very cool to see on Hacks. Then another show, Running Point, the basketball show, drama comedy on Netflix, which is actually really, really good as well. Second series has just dropped. In one of the scenes there, I noticed in one of the basketball offices on one of the screens of someone in the office, there was a food drive poster on their screen. So again, it's just small nudges here and there. When your brain is wired the way mine is, you see it everywhere. So just again, look out for that in your favorite shows as well. It's always lovely to see. And tell us about it if you see it, because we love highlighting that as well. So that's a little bit from me. We're going to go straight into our climate hat trick this week. 3 very different stories. And let us know what you think in terms of whether these climate and sustainability angles had occurred to you as well. Story 1, yellow card amnesty. We think FIFA is adapting to a longer, hotter World Cup. So news came out this week that yellow cards at the 2026 FIFA Men's World Cup are set to be wiped out at the end of the group stage and again after the quarterfinals. So this rule change is expected to be approved at an upcoming FIFA Council meeting in Vancouver. So we'll wait to hear for sure. But if it's being covered through news articles, we expect it's a given that it's about to come through. In previous tournaments, accumulated bookings were only cleared at the quarterfinals. So with the expansion of 48 teams this year for the 2026 edition across the US, Canada and Mexico, FIFA looks as though it's going to reduce the risk of players missing key knockout matches due to suspension in terms of adding in this extra layer of removing all yellow cards. The logic is partly structural. So more teams, of course, mean more matches. We've talked about this a lot. And more matches mean a higher likelihood of yellow cards accumulating. And that is going to impact suspensions. And those suspensions could impact decisive moments in terms of squad makeup. So resetting bookings earlier reduces that bottleneck. And in FIFA's view, could potentially improve competitive fairness by keeping top players available deeper into the tournament. So interesting to hear that that's happening. Now, from my perspective, I'm seeing a growing environmental subtext as well. So the 2026 tournament is going to be played, as we know, across a much larger geographic region and across different climatic conditions. Host cities are expected to experience a wide range of weather conditions. So depending on where the game's taking place, we could be looking at humidity, altitude, extreme heat. Hopefully not, but there's a chance of wildfire smoke as well, which would affect air quality. So there's going to be a lot of weather to contend with across this tournament. And according to assessments from bodies like the IPCC, heat waves in North America are becoming more frequent and intense due to climate change, increasing that physiological strain on athletes competing at the height of summer. So for us, the inference is that this all ties together tactically. Teams are already preparing for heavier rotation, longer recovery cycles, and more careful load management. So in that context, the risk of suspension through accumulated yellow cards becomes more than just a disciplinary issue. It's another variable that can thin squads and disrupt planning. So FIFA hasn't explicitly framed this rule as climate adaptation. It's aligning with a broader shift in tournament design, let's say, in line with the growth of this tournament being 48 teams, and they say removing bottlenecks at key times. But this is also going to reduce avoidable pressures on squads at a time where environmental conditions are becoming less predictable, more demanding, and keeping key players in the team and being able to rotate them and rely on that is going to be absolutely critical to teams' performance for this World Cup. So let's see what happens, and we'll keep an eye on that story. Story 2 is Brighton's new home for women's football. And we say maybe a climate test case. So Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club are planning something historic in the UK. They are going to be the first to build a purpose-built stadium for their women's team. The new ground is set to open in the 2030-2031 season. It's going to hold about 10,000 fans. It's going to sit right next to the current stadium, connected by a bridge walkway, and it's going to cost about 75 to 80 million pounds. Right now, Brighton women play their home games 20 miles or so away in a place called Crawley. So this moves everything onto one campus, and that's where, for us, this story gets interesting. Of course, new stadiums always come with a carbon cost up front. You've got steel, concrete, construction emissions. That's very obvious. But Brighton's approach could actually soften that impact because they're building this new women's stadium next to their existing stadium. They're avoiding, moving to a new remote, possibly greenfield site. but also they're tapping into existing transport links. So trains, buses, and infrastructure that already are connected to their current stadium. That's going to mean fewer fragmented venues, less travel, and better coordination for the club. So it's maybe a quieter kind of sustainability win. There's also, for me, something really interesting in the size. So the new stadium is 10,000 seats, which for us feels like the right sized stadium. It's being built for the demand that is in place right now, not perhaps a vanity or a prestige project. And that really matters because oversized venues often waste energy and resources, and they can see decades of underuse before perhaps that growth moves in. So it sounds and feels very savvy. Because it's a new build, it's a real opportunity, of course, to really lead on sustainability. And we know that Brighton Hove Albion, as a signatory to UN Sports for Climate Action Framework, have emissions reductions targets. So we can imagine when plans for the new stadium come out, we'd expect to see renewable energy, low carbon materials, water reuse systems, and all planned in from day one, obviously. So obviously, if we zoom out from this is bigger than just Brighton, although it's a great piece of news coming through for the women's game. Clubs like Kansas City Current in the US have already opened purpose-built women's stadiums, and others are following. And this shows more investment in women's sport, which we love to see because that is accelerating. And with it comes the chance to embed sustainability at the core of this growth, but also the cultural shift as well. So research shows, and we know ourselves, that many women players see climate change as already affecting the game. So we have a lot of female players speaking out around the topic, from doing reports of the impacts on climate change, like Amy Turner, Hayley Ladd, speaking out about this around Earth Day. We saw the 100 women players around the 2023 Women's World Cup offsetting their emissions. We're already seeing a lot of female players take action in this area. So as we see investment growing into the women's game, what we can see is the fan base, which we know is values driven, growing. It also gives those female athletes an ever growing platform. And that is only going to be better news for socializing and platforming the causes they care about, which we know is often climate and the environment. So it's not just about a new stadium for us. This is about the next generation of sport infrastructure. It's also about the wider context of investment into women's sport. But also from the stadium perspective, we see this project as a leaner, smarter, and more aligned with a climate conscious future. Now, just an add on to this story at the other end of the spectrum, because there was a brilliant piece by Victor Caroselli out in Sports Business Journal this week as well about the Spotify Camp Nou redevelopment. And so FC Barcelona on the other end of the spectrum has got a 1.87 billion project designed, not just to drive revenue, but also we think is helping to redefine sustainable sport venues as well. So again, we just spoke about Brighton. The updated Spotify Camp Nou is going to have a capacity of 105,000, so 10 times the size of Brighton's new women's stadium. They're going to include expanded VIP and digital experiences, and they want to unlock exponential growth. The shift here is diversification. So even during construction, a temporary museum has been set up to continue to draw visitors to go to the original site. And that's brought in 2 million visitors a year. And also, in terms of the cost of the project, really importantly, it's brought in revenue. Post-rebuild, it's expected that that museum could generate $82 million a year. So a not insignificant amount of money. Sustainability is central to this project. It's not cosmetic. The club reused 120,000 tons of concrete, which cut its emissions by 50% without increasing costs. The stadium's going to run on 100% renewable energy with solar and energy storage already planned, and will reduce long-term expenses. And also, as we saw in stories around Pakistan and Bangladesh cricket recently, having that 100% renewable energy and battery storage on site means they are going to be insulated against volatile energy shocks as well. So really, really savvy and really well thought through. They're also going to have rainwater systems, and that, of course, will reduce costs, operational costs in the longer term, and ease pressure on local infrastructure. The fans are even involved in this transition, so small surcharges are being put on tickets and merchandise to support green initiatives, showing that sustainability is going all the way through this project. All of this reminded me again that stadiums are not just venues anymore. They're complex business ecosystems where sustainability, technology, and profitability are deeply intertwined. If Barcelona gets this right, the new camp won't just be one of football's most iconic homes. It's going to also now be a blueprint for how clubs worldwide balance financial pressure and environmental responsibility. And in an era, as we know, where both costs and climate risks are rising exponentially, that might be the most valuable asset of all. Okay, story 3 is making the cut, not just the NFL draft picks, but the trees nearby as well. All right, so it was a blockbuster weekend for Fernando Mendoza, who was the first pick for the NFL draft. And it was a hugely successful event for the franchise with over 800,000 fans packing in to watch the first pick come off the board at this 3-day event. The environmental controversy surrounding it, however, highlights a growing tension in modern sport. The clash between this spectacle of an event and everything that goes with it and urban sustainability as well. The scale of this event was supported by a purpose-built draft theatre and a sprawling fan campus. So there was a lot of infrastructure shifts for this 3-day event. But beneath all of that, the quieter story has sparked a local environmental debate. So to make room for the draft's main stage and the infrastructure, dozens of trees were removed around the stadium. So depending on the estimate and where you read, that's somewhere between 57 nearly 100 trees that were cut down as part of the site preparation. City officials described it as necessary. The event space required for these crowds that they were expecting in record numbers, along with strict safety and operational requirements. These trees are part of Pittsburgh's urban canopy, some nearly 2 decades old, and of course, they are quietly performing really important environmental functions every day. They're absorbing carbon, they're cooling the surrounding area, they're helping manage stormwater in a dense urban environment, and they're home to local biodiversity. And this is where the tension lies. So the NFL and local organisers have emphasised in terms of a sustainability legacy that there are plans to plant more than 200 replacement trees and even hundreds more across the region. But we know that that environmental trade-off isn't immediate. So new trees can take years or even decades to match the carbon storage and ecological value of mature trees. And also local people are left with a long-standing environmental asset being removed for a one-off 3-day event. Supporters argue it's part of a broader urban strategy. The city says it will replant the trees, quote, inch for inch, which basically means the total canopy could eventually increase, more diverse species and better placement across neighbourhoods is what they cite. But critics point to the optics and the precedent that this sets. Because these trees weren't felled for a permanent infrastructure, it was temporary. That stage has since been dismantled, the fan zone has disappeared, and the footprint, at least in the short term, leaves behind a gap in the city's green cover. At a time, again, that we are seeing the city temperatures rising and more of the heat island effect, where we need ever more green coverage and trees in our cities to ensure that we aren't having that heat island effect for local residents. So even as a massive sports fan, it highlights growing uncomfortable truth in terms of short-term spectacle leaving behind negative local impact for communities. The ever-growing scale of events continues to demand large, resource-intensive transformations of urban space, often with visible environmental costs. And in a moment where we are seeing public awareness of climate issues increasing, these trade-offs are becoming harder to ignore. Also, we note that the draft in 2027 is due to take place on the National Mall in front of the US Capitol building. And we really hope that those iconic American elms and all the trees that line the mall are not going to meet the same fate. So there are climate hat-trick stories for this week. Story 1, yellow card amnesty, FIFA adapts to a longer, hotter World Cup. 2, Brighton's new home for women's football and what we think is a climate test case. And 3, making the cut, not just the NFL draft picks, but trees as well. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Climate of Sport podcast. Next week, I'm going to be back with more stories. Plus, I'm joined by a special guest, Kate Williams, CEO of 1% for the Planet. I look forward to chatting to you again then, and be in touch with all of your stories and anything you want us to cover and any news you've got as well. We always love to hear from you. That is a wrap on this episode of The Climate of Sport. If this got you thinking, send it to the group chat, send it to your team or someone who cares about the future of the game. Follow, subscribe and join us next time, because the biggest wins aren't just on the scoreboard, they're out there for the planet too. See you on the next one.